Hello and welcome to Angry Andy Reviews, and this is going to be a somewhat quick review of episode 3 of The Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings prequel. Already covered episode 1 and 2 the other day. But yeah, episode 3. Interesting enough, we're still kind of in the build-up zone. There is a lot of build-up, there's a lot of introduction of new characters still. There's a lot of visiting of new places still. There's a lot of characters still sort of moving into place. And after 3 hours of screen time, you do have questions about certain things about that. Suffice to say, the episode is yet another example of where the budget is really going. And to be fair, it looks absolutely fantastic. We travel, spoilers, we travel to Numenor in this episode, surprisingly for me, which begs another question that I'll get to shortly. So we travel to Numenor, and it looks absolutely fantastic. It is literally taken direct from, the artworks that have got run alongside Tolkien's previous work, and it looks fantastic. It really does. It's got all the grandiosity that you see with Minas Tirith in Middle Earth, and yet it's got all the sort of fabled lore and status, power of the Númenóreans. The only difference is some telling features about the Númenóreans that don't really match up, but this is a live action TV show. There are certain things I don't think they're probably going to be able to do or really want to do to fully match with Tolkien's lore, but I don't want to get too much into that because I'm not beholden too strongly on what was written down. I appreciate when references are made. I appreciate when certain things are accurately depicted, as Númenor does seem to be. But there are certain other things, bits and pieces that don't really matter too much to me. But yeah, so coming away from that, we get, like I said, more build-up, more character introductions. So Galadriel and this mysterious fellow that she's with, whose name I can't remember. Again, another problem. They arrive at Númenor, they're picked up by a Númenorian ship, and they're taken to see the High Queen of Númenor. And everything goes a bit wrong. There's, a bit of distrust been sown. We get a glimpse, excuse me, a glimpse of the past relationships between the Númenorians and the elves and how that's fractured and decayed to a point where they don't even allow elven ships into Númenorian territories anymore. And we see, like I said, a lot of tension there. And all of a sudden, a character pops up we were introduced to briefly, and it turns out he's Elendil. So, yeah, this is where I'm starting to get a bit sort of confused with the time frame and what have you. But again, I think it's a thing that's always been sort of like an up and down sort of scale, I think, with Lord of the Rings, because there's never anything really set in stone about how long specific ages are. I could be wrong there. But when I'm thinking about what I've read, I haven't read absolutely everything. When I think about what I've read, what I've seen, films, video games, all of this, the books, I do have a lot of Tolkien knowledge, but I'm not well versed. I'm not as well versed as I am with Star Wars, for example, or Star Trek. But Elendil appears, and of course he is the king who leads the charge against Sauron to destroy the One Ring. In the prologue that we see in the Lord of the Rings films, and of course, he ends up being killed in battle, and his son Isildur cuts the ring from Sauron's hand and refuses to destroy it at the behest of Elrond. And we also see Isildur in this as a relatively young man. I'm not sure entirely his age, but he's relatively young. So immediately we're posited the question there that, this is possibly, and it must be, within the realms of 10 to 20 years before the battle of the three armies. I don't know whether I've said that right, whether that was the Hobbit one, but I think it's the battle that they take to Mordor against the last armies. That's it. Um, yeah. So immediately the timeline is confused there. I think I thought this was set a very long time before, with a very slow build up. Showing us how the rings are formulated, how they corrupted over a period of time, but I guess it's TV, so they're going to play with the timeline much like they are doing with House of the Dragon. But interestingly enough, it did sort of grab me and go, that's not right. They're not supposed to appear yet, and I think a lot of people have mentioned that. But having said that, it's they are interesting characters. They're a bit thin at present, I'll give you that. And I think that's the problem with a lot of these characters. On the surface, they seem quite interesting, but there's not really much to them yet. There's everything in the backdrop, but nothing with them at the moment. I'm still unsure of Galadriel's motives. I'm still unsure of why she behaves in a certain way. She does come across as smug, which I think fits in terms of the age of the character, what she's seen, what she's done. She's determined to make people, trust her, and determined to make people follow her lead, to her detriment. And I think that's an interesting quality in the character. But she very nearly gets herself and her companion, who I am unsure of. He ends up, by the end of the episode, turning out to be some sort of king of the Southlands. I'm not convinced. I'm still edging towards, I think everyone's suggested it. I'm still edging towards him being Sauron the Deceiver, because there is something going on. Whenever he gets into trouble, bar one moment in this episode, he is able to talk his way out of pretty much everything. He's able to turn people around in their way of thinking, and I can't help that if he's not Sauron directly, he's being influenced by Sauron, who is there, and he's therefore further influencing everybody else around him. And further to that, there is clear sort of indication that Sauron's influence is already being felt right across the world. And we go to the elf that we saw captured in episode 2, and he is being forced into a labor camp. Again, I don't remember his name either, which is a problem. As I said in my previous review, some of these characters are a bit thin. They're not very interesting at present, and therefore I can't remember their names because they don't stand out to me. But nevertheless, we get our first real sense of action and tension within this. There are orcs, forcing them to build what looks like a massive trench, or to at least dig into something. We're not quite sure yet. And the elves try to escape. It fails. A couple of them are killed. Characters that we saw in the very first episode. And he is forced to chop down a tree in the Southlands. And it's interesting, following that Galadriel finally, after thousands of years, one major bone of contention for this, Galadriel finally realizes after thousands of years that the symbol she's been chasing is not a sigil, specifically, when she turns it by a very tiny angle of about this. She realizes it's 2 hills in the Southlands, and when she puts it up against the map, we see the map, and it appears to be the location, although much bigger area of span, of Mordor. That's correct. So we're given the location of Mordor immediately. Again, which does fiddle with the time for me. I would have thought if they were going to introduce Isildur and Elendil further down the line, I would have probably thought they would do it maybe season 4, season 5. If this is going to be a very long series, I would have thought they'd sow that seed for series 4, series 5, allow Mordor to be established, allow Sauron's plan to somewhat start, where they're starting to corrupt people with the rings, because obviously the show is called The Rings of Power, and I think that corruption is much needed. We need to be seeing that by them. We don't need to see it this season, and that's the thing. hope the season doesn't fall into that trap of doing everything so quickly that eventually we get copious amounts of filler episodes. I hope it's able to spread itself out and give itself enough time to really delve into the lore, delve into the characters, really give the characters some much needed deep moments of sort of thought and even sort of contemplation about everything that's going on, because in Lord of the Rings lore, this whole period takes over a vast amount of time, and these characters experience so much. There's a danger that we're going to skip over a lot of it in favour of getting towards the battle, getting towards the primary moments in the show. The dog's not happy with what I'm saying. But at the moment, we're 3 episodes in. It's okay at the moment. I'm still hovering around a 7 out of 10. My pillars of review scale haven't really been affected that much. Character, writing, story, they're thereabouts. Will they improve? I hope so. Essentially, at this point, just going back there quickly, with the Harfoots, given that we've been introduced to Elendil and Isildur, I'm more than convinced that the mysterious figure who came in the asteroid is in fact one of the Istari. I think it's got to be Gandalf. If not Gandalf, then Saruman. Purely because you've introduced Isildur. So there we are, because the Istari only appeared in the Second Age, so yeah, there we go. I'm going to leave this review there, because I am going to settle purely on a 7 out of 10. It is interesting. It's a beautiful watch. I think the music is very good. It gives us the echoes of Peter Jackson's work. The visuals are very good. Again, echoes of Peter Jackson's work, if not much more grander, really. But performances, I'm not entirely sure. Characters, I'm not entirely sure. Writing, up and down. But we'll see what comes. So that's my review for The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Episode 3. A solid 7 out of 10. But I do want improvement. This shouldn't be a 7 out of 10 series. This should be up there every single week, a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. But we'll see. Bye-bye for now.